It's alive.
Share your screen with the audience.
Share your screen. Why would we do that? They can see our beautiful faces. Hello.
Hello. Are we actually on? Do we?
I think we're on.
I don't know. There's the mic thing is not.
Can you guys hear? Oh, good point. Let's see. No, I think it seems to be. Can you guys hear us? If you hear us, drop a comment in the chat so we know that you're listening. We don't want to be alone. Let's bring the mic in close here.
It says chat publicly as young heretics.
This is top chat. Let's just look at live chat. All messages are visible.
Okay.
Can anybody hear us?
Oh.
Is anybody listening? Papa, can you hear me?
It is like flickering there on the thing. Maybe I can turn this up.
Oh, I can turn it up.
There we go. All right.
Let's see if that works.
Meanwhile, sing the aria, Nessun Dorma, whatever.
Yeah.
Still not. It's a little bit of.
I see 11 people.
Wait.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yay!
We can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear us? Can you confirm that you can hear the words we are saying, just for our own obsessive benefit?
I can hear,
says Baboa. All right.
I cured him. He was like, this has been deaf since birth.
I want to learn to play the piano. Doctor, will I ever play the piano again? That's right. Never say you don't get bang for your buck here at the New Jerusalem.
That's right.
Let no man accuse us of insufficient.
Anyone possessed or anything like that?
Yeah, right.
Don't tell us about it. That just frightens us.
Right, exactly. Then we have to pray and fast. I don't want to do that. Sounds awful. Well, hello.
Yes.
This is fun. Nice to be back. It's been a while since we did this.
Yeah, it is. And it has been a while since we did this. It's been like months and months and months.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
We should do it more often.
I agree. Probably. These are fun.
And we have questions, and you can ask questions on the live chat. Now, is this live chat? I'm sorry to be so technically backward, but is the live chat just your Young Heretics thing, or is it anybody who is coming from the New Jerusalem?
The honest to goodness answer to that is I don't remember what settings I put on the chat. So it's either it's not. Please come to this toilet rattle of Seattle. Actually, this is important. If you want to have us for an event, like make it happen. We would love to come to your city. We love meeting people in person. We love signing books. We both have the same pub date next Tuesday.
Insane.
Hilarious.
How did that even happen?
By act of God.
There's an act of God, because we started out with two totally different pub
dates. And yours was never moved, right? Mine was
never moved. It was yours bouncing around.
Yeah. I followed you. I'm the copycat here. But it was because like the printer got backed up and stuff. There was a bunch of stuff, but I don't know. I now have physical copies, so I know it will be available on the 15th.
There you go. All right.
Yes. So if you want to have us, like, all you have to, it's not actually that hard. You have to like find a bookstore or somewhere that would like to host us, and we can help you with that. If you like DM us, we would love to come to your city. Speaking of which, we have presents for each other.
Oh yes.
This is that very first. I actually have not yet given you my book.
You have not given me your book.
Here it is. I brought it with me.
And I have not sold you a copy.
I have cash. You take Venmo. Yeah.
But I'm so happy to have it. It really looks nice. They really did a good job, and I like the fade on the words and all this stuff.
Thank you. And yours is appropriately depressing and strange. No, it's cool. This is like they have now their brand. This is a series.
This is a brooding episode, but it really takes us deep into the character. It's very, very different.
Excellent. Yeah. Awesome. I'm really excited to read it. Sometimes I get to read your books in advance, but I've actually not gotten to read.
No. This one it took a while. We had a hard time. I had a hard time getting the cover right because the artist it was called A Woman Underground. Yeah. So the guy only wanted to put a woman on it. Yeah. He kept saying, "No, the star of the story is a guy."
Right. Can put a guy. And you're going to sell it to guys.
And we're going to sell it to guys.
Right.
Yeah. But women like these books. Every single one has a love story in it.
Yeah. There are great female characters actually in this series. Yeah. It's one of the best things about it.
But this was done by Jonathan Hay.
Okay, so yes, I have to say our friend Jonathan Hay and Cynthia Angulo is the illustrator.
Oh, so Cynthia Angulo, my favorite human being.
Yes, the true delight, Cynthia Angulo. Spencer is collabing with Uncle Fester for Halloween.
Thanks a lot. I'm touched.
You just come on here to heckle us? No, so this cover, yes. What happened is switched. It's very complicated. Switched publishers in the middle of the process, and the old cover got replaced with, I think, this really gangbuster.
Yeah.
I told them that I had this vision in my head of like the James Webb Hubble telescope, but as a stained glass window. So it was like you do like a galaxy thing, but and instead what they did is they kind of like it looks like a door opening in the heavens or something into the Holy Spirit.
So what did Cynthia do?
Well, so Jonathan like worked with her to conceive the thing, and then she is the one that actually like took the images and put them in place, and like we actually all got to, the first time I've ever done this, I got to like collaborate and give notes on the cover and be like, can we move? We did a lot of moving these around, and like it was really sweet, and kind of the wave of the future.
She's the Cynthia's the person who like invented all the sort of original animation for my show and everything like that. You know, I feel like I'm sitting in front of your book.
Should we move them?
Let's see if we can move them so they're both visible.
Oh, thank you. Terrific. This ought to be fun. And this is extra important. So we thought like so cool to be as you said, marching shoulder to shoulder into Pub Day, that we would do a special New Jerusalem only deal.
Here it is.
For our subscribers. So
except for this guy with the Uncle Fester.
The Uncle Fester guy is disqualified from the jump.
In fact, we have a virtual bouncer coming to
a trapdoor should be opening underneath you. No, but so here's how. First of all, you have to go to newjerusalem.substack.com. No, thenewjerusalem.substack.com and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're just joining us, we would love for you to be a part of our father-son conversation on faith in the modern day. Both of these books, I think, have something in very different ways, but have something to say to that. Both of these books would be of huge interest to anybody that reads New Jerusalem. And if you pre-order them together, if you do the Klavan twofer, father-son, and buy them both, and then screenshot your pre-orders receipt so that we can confirm that you have done it, and then DM your receipt to one of us on Substack.
Right.
We will pick 5 lucky winners to get the price of the book comped. So we're basically giving away 5 copies.
I don't have to comp this.
I'll cover you. I will buy 5 copies of A Woman Underground because that's just the kind of guy I am. But I will be giving away 5 of my books and 5 of my father's books.
We will comp both books.
We will comp both books.
5 people if you send it. Yes.
For 5 lucky winners. So if you want to support us in that way, and if you would like a free copy of the book, just do that. And we will also post instructions on how to do that at the New Jerusalem.
Yes. And tell your friends, if you like the book, tell your friends you like the book.
Yes.
That's how we live.
That's true.
That is the life of the book, is word of mouth.
Good point.
Yes.
Yes.
Overrides everything else. Overrides advertising, overrides, stuff you do online, interviews.
Yeah.
People saying, I like this book to their friends. Yeah.
I had not thought about that, but that's true. Because you get book release time, if you don't know, is a very hectic, crazy time of like talking about the book constantly, thinking that you're talking about the book too much,
right?
And then talking about it some more,
right?
And so you do get into this mindset where it's like, I have to get on this show and I have to do this and like promote. But you're absolutely right. It's the people that read the book that matter.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it is amazing.
Yeah. Yes. So you guys are actually why we are able to be here, and we like being here. So that's good.
That's right. Should we answer some questions?
We definitely should answer some questions.
Do we look on the?
Oh my God, I'm late. It's my favorite person to tease. I think he's talking about me here. So now we each have one heckler now. Okay, let's see. Oh, this is not here. Actually, I'm going to pull them up on my phone.
All right. Me can also do this.
Chudmander. Chudmander. I love it. Chudmander says that he loved Foundations of the West. Thank you. What a privilege it was to do that show with Jordan in Athens. It was like, the sort of thing that you when you're starting out your career, if I went back in time 5 years ago and said to myself that you're going to get to go to Athens with Jordan Peterson and talk about the history of the West, I would have said you're out of your mind. But it seems like people have really been enjoying that series, so that's great, despite my participation in it. Okay, let's see. I'm going to start at the. Actually, I guess we should start at the bottom because that'll be the oldest.
Okay.
Or no, actually, I'm starting at the top. The top is the oldest. And the first question is actually just, can we get a print and audiobook version of the essays and letters on the New Jerusalem? And I think the answer to that is stay tuned. We've had this question a couple times. We're sort of like thinking about.
We're constantly talking about it. The problem is we never get to see each other.
That's true.
If we could just sit down and discuss it for a couple hours, we'd probably figure it all out.
Well, we can make that happen.
Yes.
Yes. If I can make it out here for this. So that's a good question, Jeff. You're not the first to ask it. And I do think something, because it's, I have to say, this has been a very special thing.
It's been insanely bizarre. I mean, it seems to be writing itself. And it's just like, I find myself learning things from things that I'm actually writing.
I know.
You're writing.
It's crazy.
And the essays, your essay this month is great, but all the essays have been really special, I think. And just
some stuff you don't find other places, which is why we did the site.
That is true. I cannot think of another site that is doing what we're doing, which is kind of weird.
Crazy.
I mean, it makes you feel like,
One of these days, everybody's going to be doing it, but we're out ahead. I mean, that's kind of what my essay today is about. It's about the fact that we are on the cusp of this being the thing.
This is the story of my life, though. I do things first, and then other people do them, and people don't remember, and I have to stand outside going, "Please, please, give me just $1, so I can have a cup of coffee."
It's if you would only retain. Oh, yeah, this is a question. That's that's the Reagan quote, right? There's no telling how much you can do if you don't care who gets the credit.
Right.
Okay, here's a question from Ariana, which I really like. Jordan Peterson has been trying to get people to answer or define discernment by the Holy Spirit. I'm curious about how the great Clavans might define spiritual discernment.
Well,
yes,
I think it's very difficult. You have to, obviously, it's very easy for your feelings to get in the way and for your wishes to get in the way, and you want to hear certain things. I think the thing is, before you start discerning things, you have to be in a relationship with God. You have to start to recognize his voice in your life. That's one thing. And the other thing that I've noticed just over time, I've noticed that God shines a light about 1 foot in front of my feet. I mean, have you noticed this? Like you are stumbling in the dark and you think like, what do I do 6 years from now? How do I plan my life? And that's not the way it works. What happens is like about a week before you have to do something, a month, something like that, you suddenly realize, or you know the next thing you have to do.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I can only speak from my own experience, and certainly that is true, and it leads to my thought about it too, which is, I say this advisedly. If you come to God, he's going to give you everything you want. Everything that you want in the truest heart of your hearts, not the thing that you want immediately right now. If you see some hot chick on the street and you want that girl, he's not necessarily, but he's going to give you everything that you want most dearly. But he's almost certainly not going to give it to you in the form that you currently want it. And so for me, the hardest part of discernment is dropping at the threshold of prayer all of the pictures I have in my head about how I want my life to go. It's very painful and very difficult. But when Jesus says, like, lay your burdens down and take mine up, like, your job in prayer is actually not to figure out how to maneuver to the end that you have in mind. God is in charge of the end. Your job is to devote your heart solely and exclusively to doing God's will and to loving God. And God, it looks like something. As Dad says, you learn to recognize him. God is goodness and love and mercy and justice. Which is very, very hard to accept. It's very hard to take that in. I mean, it really is. First of all, you get rid of all the images. You have to get rid of, your fault. Not you. You don't have to get rid of your fault. It's so isomorphism. Yes. It's uncanny.
It's uncanny, right? Uncanny resemblance. But you have to get rid of all that stuff, and you have to get rid of all the pictures that you have. And the other thing that is really weird, I have found that almost the things that you want almost creep up upon you, so that you don't even realize you're being given them. It is not like, I wanted a puppy, and you open a box and there's a puppy. There's very slowly the kind of puppy comes into your life. And it is a remarkable thing, and it doesn't come without, life still has its grief and its worry and its pain and anxieties and all those things. But it is a remarkable thing. Because what you're really asking God is to make him what he made you to be. And that's what he wants. That's what he wants.
He literally wants that. I suspect that God doesn't give you the thing immediately because then you would love it more than him. I mean, I think like when you come to God with this thing that you want so badly, what you're really saying is I want this, and I'm using God to get to that. right? I'm using God as a stepping stone or a vending machine to get to this other thing.
Right.
And the problem is not that you want that thing, because that thing is probably real in some sense. You're probably actually supposed to have that. But in order to have it in the appropriate way, you first have to give up your love of it. It's like Abraham and Isaac.
Yep. Why is there the gigantic floating thumb?
I cannot for the life of me. Here's what I would like to spiritually discern is how can I get Apple to stop?
I know how to get rid of this.
Do you really?
I think so.
Oh boy.
Let me see. Yep, there it is. Reactions. And you turn
Whoa.
That off, and then it's going.
Blowing my mind, man. You young people in your technology.
Yeah, I know. You know why I know that?
Why?
Because I was doing like an actual big show, and I think it was Megyn Kelly or something like that, and things were waving, and the guys, oh my God, this is humiliating.
Yeah, congratulations. Anyway, that we can maybe knock out 2 questions in one with this, because there's somebody else asked, how do you keep from confusing your own desires from God's plan?
I mean, I don't have as big a problem as that, because it's taken me a long time to trust that the voice of God was the voice of God because of that very thing. So I'm kind of coming from the other side. Like I can never be sure. And then one day I started to say, you know what? I can tell the difference. And it's like everything else. You have to learn how to do it. It is a thing, and it's very easy for an outsider to say, oh, it's just a feeling, or it's just your own voice. But it's just like telling the difference between whether you have a crush or whether you're in love, or telling the difference when you're writing, whether you've got the sentence right. There are things you actually do learn how to do, and they have no, I mean, one of the things is, it's kind of funny that Jordan Peterson asked that question, because that's, I feel, the place where he's stuck, that he's stuck in the material. There's got to be a way to discern this. Maybe some chemical comes into your head. I mean, this is the thing. I'm always bugging him about it.
I think there are places in the Bible where the authors are trying to describe this. You can only describe it as the difference in the sensation and the quality of thought. And here's James 3:17. The wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. I mean, he's describing a character, right? Like all of these things are qualitative differences from your thoughts, which are not those things, right? Purity, simplicity, right? Like it comes with the hallmarks. It probably, is something worth following. And learning to understand that that's what that is. Like goodness, justice, mercy, whatever, those just are God. Like there's no difference between those things.
And it is the strangest thing that I have this conversation with a number of people where you suddenly at the end of the conversation, you look at each other and go, wow, it's all real. And that happens because it's amazing how often you go to church and the reading answers your questions or addresses your concerns, and just a remarkable number of times that happens. So.
I'm sorry. I'm just Spencer. You're going to cover the Aeneid after the Odyssey. I'm taking requests actually for what to do after the. I've been doing Iliad and Odyssey for weeks and weeks on Heretics. Cool. So I'm going to picking what to do next. What do you think I should do next?
What are you doing now?
The Iliad and the Odyssey.
And what should you do next?
Yeah,
you should do the 4 dialogues of Plato.
I should.
Yes.
Okay. You know what it is? Too much Greeks.
What?
Is it too much Greeks?
No, I think first of all, that's very much your
but
it's very much your wheelhouse.
Yeah,
Start in your wheelhouse.
Okay, I will take that under advisement. Actually, this is related. I recently finished Paradise Lost, says Garrett, and it was probably the toughest book I've read. Well, fair shake, right? I mean, it was one thing if it was C-Spot Run, but I mean, Milton is difficult even for sort of like advanced readers.
And there are also versions of it that keep the original spelling, which I think you shouldn't read.
Who needs the original spelling?
The original spelling.
I don't think Milton was sitting around thinking like,
a
single S is removed.
It's going to look like an F just to confuse.
Right, exactly. You know the story about why they changed the way S is spelled?
No,
it's totally apocryphal. I doubt it's true, but apparently some printer in the early days was looking at those S's that looks like, and Shakespeare has the line, where the B sucks, there suck I. And he was looking at this line with the F's and figuring like, we've got to get rid of these. Okay, so after the first section or two, I had to supplement my reading with Spark Notes, which improved things significantly. how do you prepare for first-time read-throughs for something like this? Dante's Divine Comedy is next. Hopefully, won't be quite the same story. How do you get ready to read it?
Well, I'm a big believer in reading first and then preparing and going back and reading again.
Yes.
But in something like Dante, I'm not sure I would say that. I think that it's a really good. Our friend Michael Knowles just did a very good lecture about it, talking about the particularity of it. And he mentions at the start of this lecture, Knowles always does this. It's one of the reasons we should back a car over it, is that he said, I have a friend who says this, and then he quotes this brilliant friend who's me. And every time he does this, I say, like a little bit of credit.
I have a friend named. Yeah. How much harder is that?
But one of the things about Dante is it's so specific in its stories, and they're always so heavily footnoted that you always feel like you should know who Giuseppe Bazunu is in the ninth circle of hell. And really, you don't need to know that. I mean, you can read it without that, but it does help to at least get a sort of idea of what the story is. And I would do less before reading, and then after reading, do the prep and then go back again. That's the way I like to do it myself.
Yeah, that thing you said about what the story is, I'm teaching this semester for the first time since grad school, and it's been such a awesome experience. And I was talking beforehand and thinking what do people need to know to get into this stuff? And it's very, very easy to bog yourself down with modern theories. This is C.S. Lewis said this about his students, that they all thought out of a sort of misplaced humility. They thought they needed somebody to explain Plato to them because they weren't skilled enough to crack open Plato themselves. 99% of the time when it comes to interpretation and stuff, your guess is as good as the random scholars, and probably better. There's so much junk. So you don't want to get into a thing where you're reading a bunch of takes before you, but you do a lot of the time want to know the story before you go in, which is counterintuitive because we don't like spoilers.
Right.
But the Greeks, when they went to Homer, they already knew everything that happened.
Yeah.
When they went to the plays, they knew everything that happened. So now with my students, I just tell them the story real quick. It's this is what happens in this play. Because then you get this very high flow. It's about sort of how the whole thing is delivered. And then you want a good addition with footnotes, facing page notes and stuff. But also I think there's a lot of people get together and read in groups. That's one thing I always tell people, read stuff aloud. And then just beyond the historical, the actual facts and historical details, which you do need somebody to explain to you in a good edition or a good whatever, the author is telling you. He's talking to you. He's not talking to Scott. He's talking to people that are just going to react. So if you're having a reaction to a text, that's actually probably a safer guide to interpretation than some feminist critic.
I also think it's the purpose of the text is your experience of it. And this is one of the things that really kind of annoys me about the way critics address these things. It's not the criticism. Criticism is the blind man with the elephant.
Yes.
And some guy comes back and says, well, it feels like a tail. And the guy says, it feels like a trunk and a leg and all this stuff. And I think that's what critics do. They give you their angle on it. But you want to start with your angle, your experience of the text. And I was thinking, as we were talking about Paradise Lost, I was thinking about, you can probably quote this, which would be really annoying. But I was thinking about that beautiful, beautiful passage of Satan falling from heaven.
He fell from morn to noon. He fell from noon to dewy eve, a summer's day.
It's so beautiful.
That's great.
And what's so beautiful about it is the peacefulness of it, the sort of gliding, but really he's plummeting to earth, and you get that at the same time. And he's plummeting to hell. It's even worse. And so to get that experience, you don't actually want somebody in your head telling you what it meant and the language and all this stuff. It's just read it first and get it. And then when you go back, and read commentary on it, you'll learn stuff. One of the things I do still with Shakespeare, I mean, I now consider myself a good reader of Shakespeare. I've read him. I think the only thing I've read more than Shakespeare is the Bible. And it's I just absolutely love him. But every time I go back to the plays, I sit down with the BBC version of it, which always has the whole text, but it has great actors, Anthony Hopkins playing Othello and all this stuff. And I watch that first to get the experience, and then I read it with the notes so that tell me what the language is. And I think that's what you want. That experience comes first.
Yes, including being confused, by the way. I mean, this is another thing I keep saying to my students. It's a lot of scholars write because most scholars, the point of most scholarly writing is to hide the author's ignorance. It's to pretend that the author doesn't have any open question. That's why when you read someone really great, like C.S. Lewis, and you discovered that he's actually like thinking about and asking the questions you are asking. That's when you know you're dealing with somebody great. And so people get so scared to be like, what's going on here? You know, and then half the time it's like, actually, I'm not totally sure I know what's going on there. You know, like there's like a lot of value even in your confusion. So don't like cheat yourself out of that.
Yeah.
You know, just get, as you're saying, get the experience. By the way, for Dante, the Durling Martinez translation, which has facing note, it gives you the Italian and then the English and then a bunch of really great notes, and they did each of the three. You know,
now I'm about to go back to Dante, and I read that there's one in prose that has no notes. Whoa. And I thought that would be a really interesting experience, because then you're stuck with the story. You know, it's like,
it is hard to distinguish whether you need to know whether, like, you know, was it you who said that the Inferno is like Giuseppe Bandolini gets
that's
his?
The quote, that's the quote Knowles said,
right.
Which, by the way, I took from somebody else.
Right.
Anyway,
so it's like great artist steal, but it's hard to know how much of that like some of it really is great. Like his when he meets his teacher, there's all this sort of like complexity, whatever. But
now I've read it like a number of times, and I'd like to just see what it's like to just sort of read it. Simply. You know, since I speak no Italian.
What are you talking about?
And precious little English.
You're being too modest. Italian is fantastic. Let's see. Okay, so Zach, this topic comes up frequently, but I wanted to focus on a very practical element. What ways do you think will be effective in reigniting young men's interest in literature? This is an Andrew Klavan question, because you are one of the few living people who has actually gotten young boys to read books.
Yes, I have.
Right?
That's
I mean,
true.
I actually have I guess it's a cousin-in-law or something that loves your books.
No, it's
like
weird. It's weird too now to meet people who say, "I read you when I was a kid." You know, want to slap them. What are you saying? That I'm ancient?
No, and also I've moved on now. Graduated.
So what exactly is the question? Though? How do you do it?
What are we going to do? So as much as I value this Substack for my personal edification, I'm skeptical that online group chats, book clubs, and subscribing to channels on YouTube will have an impact in a way that seeps down into normal, everyday ways men interact with one another. How do I get my friends to care about Shakespeare instead of just wanting to watch Shakespeare? I think he's asking how do you cultivate or recultivate a literary society?
Well, to me, the whole thing about literature and art in general is it's about life. And it is a tool for living, and it is an added tool for living. It is an added joy to living. And so, like, you know, I think whenever I talk about this, I always think of the little knobs on towels that supposedly increase its surface area so that it dries you quicker. Like, I'll tell you this great experience. We both love Mary Harrington, a lovely person and a very brilliant young lady.
Yes.
And I wrote this book, The Truth and Beauty, that has a chapter on Frankenstein, which is also about women. And it's about feminism and why feminism went wrong and what all of this stuff. And it's derived totally from reading poetry. It's my take on history from reading poetry. And then in Mary Harrington's book, Against Progress,
Feminism Against Progress,
which came out years after Truth and Beauty, like 2 or 3 years after Truth and Beauty. She has a chapter that says exactly what I say, but says it quoting sociologists.
Right.
And so I just knew that from reading poetry, because the time had been given to me as a living thing. So it was like I had lived through the 1700s, so I kind of knew what happened.
Right.
And that to me is what literature is. It gives you more life, and it gives you, and only. For me, literature does it more than anything else, but it gives you more life. It means you have lived. I mean, how often are you going to live through Satan's fall from heaven to hell? You know, it's just
hopefully only once.
Hopefully only once. And no, but I mean, it puts that inside you. And you know, one of the things that really bothers me about young men is they're easily conned, and young women too. People come along and say, well, you know, you think America is good, but it's really not. And they don't know what to compare it to. Like, they think it's bad compared to what? You know, like what are you comparing it to? They're never comparing it to anything because they don't know anything. So, like, I think that it just increases your life. It increases both the scope and depth of your life, but it also increases the timeline of your life because it puts the minds of people who lived before you were even thought of. It puts them into your mind as well. It's just nothing else does it except for literature.
No, that's well said. And the other part of this is not only does reading give you life, but reading is a kind of life.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Something that I am at pains to stress whenever lovely and well-meaning people ask me for the list of the 100 greatest books or whatever, my favorite 10 books. And it's not that I don't think that's where, I mean, we run a list on our Substack, thenewjerusalem.substack.com, on Fridays, which you should subscribe to. In fact, you should be a paid subscriber, because if you're a paid subscriber, you can get these Friday lists. So we do, I mean, we say like, but I fear that the impulse to read through a list of the 100 greatest books is the impulse to treat reading like a task that you can be done with. It's like sort of, I need to get this sorted in the same way that I need at some point to get my driver's license. And then you never have to take your driver's test ever again. Right. And that's how people think about reading. But in fact, as you've just demonstrated by talking about reading Dante, over and over again, or Shakespeare over and over again, like, it's actually about life. Like, I would much rather, it's a way of life and a dimension of your life. And I would much rather people spend 30 minutes a day reading anything than that they spend a year reading the 100 greatest books. And so I raise all this because the question is a practical one, right? How do we get to a place where like reading is a thing that you do instead of playing video games or going on TikTok? And my answer to that would simply be the Shia LaBeouf meme. Like, just do it. Like, you can't cause this to happen in society, but you can call 5 bros that have always wanted, because every bro, no matter like who the fellas are, every bro is always sitting around being like, I should read. Like, I wish I can't tell you the number of times people are like, I wish I read more. I wish I had more time for reading. And it's just like, well, be a man about it. Like, just go do it. Like, go like meet once a week for 30 minutes and talk about one chapter of Beowulf.
First of all, two things about this. When I was a Ute, I traveled a lot around the country, and it was very illuminating. One of the things that I heard again and again is, well, I'm not, smart. I'm not like the experts on television, but I seems to me this. And then the next thing that came out of the mouth was always incredibly wise and smart. And the reason they feel that they are not smart is because a lot of times they're not well read. I mean, and that is really what they're talking about, and it doesn't have to be at all. And the other thing is, we have done this many times, both with each other and with a group of people, to sit around with a bunch of guys and smoke cigars and talk about the things that you've read is one of the great joys of life. It is 100%. I have felt the literal presence of the Holy Spirit more often doing that than almost anything else. And it's just to sit there and not, guys always get a little competitive, but it doesn't have to be a competition. I mean, first of all, at this point, no one's read more than me. So even you remember more than I remember. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, because guys like to talk about another thing.
Yes.
And if it's a book, then you're talking about everything.
Yes.
You're talking about all the great stuff.
Totally. And to deprive yourself of that because whatever.
Yeah.
Like if it's literally because you can't get up the willpower, like I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's really
doesn't fix that problem.
We disdain you.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. A little disdain for your live stream. Aren't you glad you subscribed to the New Jerusalem?
Well, we disdain.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm 50. I find this question really interesting. I'm not sure what we're going to say. I'm 50, and a lot of my friends and relatives are childless cat ladies. Not
is from a lady.
Yes, it seems to be Whit Gray. She looks like a lady. I usually remove not all of them, but most of them are innately unhappy. I usually remove black holes of negative energy from my life, but if I stop hanging out with the unhappy older childless women, I'll lose a significant portion of my community. I'm not sure where to go from here. I have 3 kids who keep me busy, but not busy enough to not have friends. Should she cut these people out of her life?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Unless they are literally dragging her down, not literally, unless they are figuratively dragging her down into their unhappiness. I mean,
I think the vibe I'm getting from this note is that this person is dissatisfied with her friend group. That it is a downer to be surrounded by people in the same way that I think guys get kind of bogged down in a group of losers when they've decided to take their life into their hands, and then you hang out with like your old stoner friends, and all they want to do is like stare at the ceiling That's a drag.
And the problem with that is they want you to do it too.
Yes, of course they do. Yeah. And then your success becomes an implicit affront to them, and then so forth. So like, but I don't think, I mean, there's all this stuff now in the culture about, the friend breakup, and you have to be consciously uncoupling from people. I think that's silly. I think these people, for whatever reason, they're in your life. You probably have history with them. You're not worthless people.
Right,
they're just not like the right company. They're not the right consistent company for you. So my suggestion would be to like make new friends but keep the old. To like sort of just take some of the time that you would usually be spending with these other people and go do the sorts of things that people like you are now do.
I think that's really good advice. And I think, you can take a lesson from my experience of alcoholics, because writers know a lot of alcoholics because a lot of writers are alcoholics. And at some point, I am not an alcoholic and wish not to remain not an alcoholic.
Yes.
At some point I start to say, listen, I'm not drinking anymore. I'll come out with you, I'll have 2 drinks, and then we can keep talking, but I'm not going to drink.
Yeah.
And 90% of the time, those people stop going out to dinner with me.
Right.
That's why they're there. They're actually there for the booze. And so if you stop participating in the things that make these people sad,
yes.
If you stop participating in their sadness, a lot of times people will sever themselves for you. I mean, there are a lot of fetishes in the world. And what I mean by a fetish is a trauma that somebody's been through that they repeat over and over again. So if, for instance, they have had some problem with women, they'll continue to have that problem with women again and again. And when you stop participating in that, when you say, I'm not going to sit up till 2 o'clock in the morning and listen to yet another one of your crazy girlfriend stories, they're done, because that's their fetish. That's what they're really there for. Right. And so you can excise yourself from people who are there for the destruction, the self-destruction.
110%. And you don't have to say a word.
You don't have to do anything.
And genuinely, you don't. Maybe one of them comes with you, and then great. Maybe
that also happens.
5% of the time, you're actually a good influence on them. And then you haven't cut yourself out of their lives,
right?
And you haven't deprived them of the pleasure of your company, because your company is now a worthwhile thing. Right. So like, because this person has already done the thing that I usually tell people when people are usually writing with this stuff. They're usually asking about, how do I make high value friends? And the answer to that is become a high value person. Of course, so this person has already done that. And I think like there must be, moms groups, reading book clubs, whatever, things going on. Like I always think start with gathering and doing the thing that you like to do, and then let that be the kind of magnet around you for your friends. And maybe some of your new friends will come through with you into that, but most of them will probably do what Dad just described. It's a part of their own.
I think before we go on, we should remind people, especially because there are new people here.
Yes.
If they buy, you explain this because you explain it better than me.
Oh no! Now we'll have to see if I say the same thing this time as I did before. But okay, so we've got 2 books: Light of the Mind, Light of the World, Illuminating Science Through Faith by me, Woman Underground, the latest in the thrilling Cameron Winter mystery series. And they're coming out on the same day. It's a father-son special, which means that if you want to support us, which we would very much be grateful for, and if you want to read these books, which you should, because they will both add a lot to your life, you should order them together, buy them both at the same time, screenshot your pre-order image, and then we will pick 5 people that pre-ordered to comp their books. You'll get basically a free pair of books. If you DM us on Substack at thenewjerusalem.substack.com, DM us your pre-order screenshot, and we will enter you automatically into the drawing to win. And either way, you're going to get these 2 great books. So win-win.
Yes. That you don't even need the money. We'll send you.
Come
the
on,
money, but you won't need it. You'll be so happy.
Seek ye first the kingdom of literature, and all these. Perhaps a comped book will be added unto you.
So I think I don't want to be too heavy-handed, but I do think we should just pause for a minute, and each of us say what the book is about, because you haven't really explained what this is. It's a wonderful book, by the way. I hate to praise another writer. We're not even related, though, and I will tell you, it is a terrific book.
Oh, very kind. And I would praise Cameron Winter if you've given it to me in time. But I will say that the others have been really phenomenal, and they are the rare today very rare kind of page-turning thriller that is also a novel of ideas, which is just such a feat to pull off.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah, that's what they are, and that's what the great mystery novels are. And down back to Dostoevsky, it's my book is a history of science. It's a new history of science told with faith in mind. So it's really for two kinds of people, which you're probably one of these kinds of people. You're somebody who grew up believing that in order to be smart and in order to be rational, you had to be an atheist, because science is the kind of pinnacle of all knowledge, and faith is anti-science, or requires you to be irrational or to believe in imaginary crazy things. Or you're a religious believer, faith is very precious to him or her, and you feel that science is a threat to it because it's been sold that way to you, that this science is basically the thing that has already deconstructed your outdated, ridiculous belief. The argument of this book is that both of those ideas are wildly outdated. There might have been a time when it looked as if science had demonstrated that the world was a machine that ran on its own, didn't need God, didn't need us. But today, as in right this second, actual science is saying almost the opposite of that and uncovering a world that looks a lot like the world described in our scriptures. We just haven't taken stock of that in our popular mythology of science. So the book is told as a story, I think kind of a rip-roar. For a true story, it's a kind of a rip-roaring intellectual history of how science arose out of the religious impulse, departed from the religious impulse, and is now, I think, pointing us back toward the religious impulse. So
that's great. And it actually, first of all, it does. I mean, people have said this before, made this comment before, that faithlessness is out of date.
Yes.
But you prove it. and you do. You prove it with science. Your mastery of the science is amazing, coming from a classicist. I don't think there is another classicist who could have done that. I think it's an amazing work. Well, mine, I can't give it that kind of scholarly depth, because it is a thriller. But we were talking about reading, and it's in some ways it's a thriller about reading, in the sense that in this book, Cameron Winter comes into possession of a kind of cult novel and starts reading it, and realizes that the heroine is based on the love of his life, the girl that he loved and lost, and starts to realize that she is in terrible, from reading this novel, starts to realize that she is in terrible danger, and goes looking for her. And in doing that, he enters a world, an American world, that is coming apart, that is very much like the American world that we're in today, of extremism, of violence that's condoned by the powers that be because it serves their purposes. And he is looking for her in that world. And so I wanted, the problem I've always wanted to solve is, a lot of times people like me who are on the conservative side of things, we look at this leftist literature and we think, stop telling me what to think. And then people try to write conservative literature, and I think, stop telling me what to think. And so all I wanted to do was just tell a story that takes place in the highly politicized America that we're living in. And this is basically a race against time through that highly politicized America by a guy who really has no politics. He's a guy who worked for the government as a killer. He's now trying to get away from that, but he's also realizing that the country he killed for also has its flaws and its corruption. So I think it's a really rich book. It is the turning point in this guy's life, because he's been kind of trying to piece himself back together, and this is the moment when he comes face to face with himself and what it means to have done the things that he's done.
I think we've been talking about what literature does for you, and this is a novel that perfectly. I actually, again, haven't read this one, but the series illustrates this perfectly, because there are a few characters that you've created that have really entered into my kind of inner life. One of them is the main character of Werewolf Cop, which is one of my favorite of your novels. Cameron Winter has that same character, that you kind of know him. He increases the capacity of your soul for vision and understanding. And I'm not sure, I think it is an intellectual. I think it's a book that demonstrates that highbrow literature doesn't have to be boring, it can be fun to read.
Well, this is when I was your age, is what I started out to do, was to take the great British thrillers like A Woman in White and give them that speed that only American thrillers have, that speed and density and quickness. And so hopefully I've gotten a little bit better at it, having done it so much. All right, let's go back to the
Yes, let's go back. Okay. great. I'm excited for people to read these books.
Actually. Yeah, me too.
It's always like a great moment when suddenly people get their hands on them. Okay. Sir Baldwin and Sir Buffwin. I'm not sure which is which.
How kind of you to say.
Yeah, right. What are things you would suggest looking for in a woman for marriage, or what are deal breakers in your mind? Does she have to be a Christian? Does she have to be conservative? What if she doesn't want to be a stay-at-home mom? What are things you could sort out over time versus things you should just accept?
Well, I think, obviously, aside from the absolute indescribable attraction and connection that you feel with another person, which is obviously where most of these things start, I think you want a woman who wants joyfully to live the life that you want to live. So if you want, it was very important to me to marry a woman who wanted to be a mom and wanted to make a home for me, because I'm a kind of a wanderer in the world. And those were really important things. But it was not important at all for me to convince a woman, find a woman I had to convince that that's what she wanted. I wanted a woman who that was what she wanted it too.
Yes.
And so I think those are the important things of how you live. I'm not as sure that ideas are all that important, because I'm always getting this letter. I'm sure you get this too. Yeah. How do I convince someone this? And, and you know what? I've never even worried about it. I don't try to convince anybody of anything. I think that loving someone is an amazing medicine that sometimes cures a lot of people's problems. It takes a long time, but I think when you love someone, you can love them into mental health. But if somebody is truly self-destructive, if somebody is truly angry, if someone is truly traumatized so that they can't actually enter into a loving relationship, those can be actual deal breakers. I mean, I think that, I hear this story too often. My wife is a wonderful, wonderful person, but she won't sleep with me. And I thought, well, that's part of marriage. Part of marriage is not just sleeping together, but liking sleeping together. And so I think that, you want somebody who not only wants to live the life you want to live, but really would like that, would really enjoy that. And I think, having been married to your mother now, we've been together 50 years, which is just amazing. Everything changes. You go through great developments, but you want to start at least on the same page, because then when you diverge, you can kind of follow each other along and readjust.
Yeah, that's very, very beautifully said. I mean, you have a much longer track record of success on this score than I do, but it seems to me that it's funny for me to say this, because I love ideas and I love talking about ideas. I love fighting about politics and trying to persuade people in that context. Right? Sure. Like if your friends disagree about something, it's really fun to argue. But like 99% of the stuff we talk about when we talk about politics is hypotheticals. It's like, what do you believe about transgender bathrooms? Yeah. Well, do you know any transgender people that are going to the bathroom? Like, do you have any, is this like a concrete issue in your life? And so they can be useful for illuminating, like, sort of underlying values. But if she has got like the wrong opinion about, like, I don't know, have a tax code or something, well, it'd be fun to spice up your life. I mean, there is, the religion one is harder for me because of the don't be unequally yoked thing. Like, I think that religion, if you're doing it right, religion is so core to that wanting, to what it is that you want, that it might almost be the same thing. True. But there's a big caveat here, which is that not everyone who is on the path to God currently calls himself a Christian. I think that everyone who is on the true path to God is in some sense a Christian. But, God is working on and in the life of a lot of people that have not yet kind of like bitten that bullet. And it would be a shame to end a relationship, for example, because you see somebody working toward that, but she hasn't gotten baptized yet or something. That said, I do think I take that much more seriously. I take religion much more seriously than politics, I guess.
No, sure. Of course. Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Should we take a question from one of these things?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I don't know again, I have no idea who these people are. Oh, I know who they are. I think these are my young Heretics followers.
Oh, yeah, they are.
So
okay. It's kind of unfair. We sort of said we would take them
from the yes, but some of them are many of them are both. So Charles Berry, for instance, is both. But let's see if we can find somebody in here that is asking questions. You can never have too much of the Greeks, says Charles. Good call. There you go. All right. So that we actually did answer that question, sort of. Oh, here's Aaron. He's a New Jerusalem subscriber. He says, if you would like to continue the Tolstoy back and forth, do you think his late in life novel Resurrection preserves the greatness you find in War and Peace and Karenina? Actually,
no.
I don't know.
I mean, I think that I've read a fair amount of Tolstoy's religious writing, and I don't actually find it all that compelling. Like I find it, I found his little pamphlet, "What is Art," very compelling because of his kind of disdain for the people who treat art in a hyper serious way. But I believe that Tolstoy was meant to write novels, and that his novels are unmatched by anybody. I mean, only Dickens stands anywhere near him, and maybe Dostoevsky. But I think when he found the religion that he found is not my religion, it's not my Christianity. It's a very practical sort of change the world Christianity. As I'm continually saying, Jesus never says the world is going to become a better place if you believe in me. He says your life is going to be full of joy. And so I never found his later writing to be as compelling as those novels. I'm not dissing it. I've read it with pleasure, but I've never found anything that he wrote later on to be as great as those books.
That's really interesting. When you were talking about being sort of art prophesying, I was thinking of Dostoevsky, because Dostoevsky is, like, to me, the greatest wonderment of reading Dostoevsky is to find just everything that is currently going on.
He's a prophet,
right there.
No question about it. He's a prophet.
And Bernard Knox has this wonderful essay that I cite way too much, but Bernard Knox was, kind of the critical counterpart to Robert Fagles, who was the great translator of Homer. And he wrote these wonderful essays, and he talks about Euripides as a prophet. And he says he compares him to Dostoevsky. And he says, like, the artist as a prophet isn't somebody with a special gift of foresight. He's the only person that can really see what's going on in the present.
Yes,
and the seeds of what's happening are there in the present. And so I feel that, like, the novel at its best kind of does that. And for that reason, like, theology is not really all that helpful. Like, it's helpful to have a theology because it shapes the way that you see the world. But then you have to just see the world. You have to sort of be there. It's like not my gift. It's not because I'm like a theory. I'm always capital T theorizing, which makes it very difficult for me to write fiction for that reason. And I think, like, there might be something. The very few people that have been able to preserve the urgency of their artistic gift through their conversion. You're one of them. T.S. Eliot was one of them.
But I went through a period when I couldn't. It was really interesting when I really stalled. After writing my memoir, I kind of stalled. And one of the reasons I made Cameron Winter a non-believer, he's not like an atheist, but because he knows something mysterious out there. But he's a non-believer. As I wanted to force myself into a position where I allowed more opinions than my own to flourish, so that each character could see the world as he did.
That's great. Yeah. And that is an important feature that conservatives kind of get wrong a lot about art. I always use the example of Game of Thrones, that in Game of Thrones, you know exactly what George R.R. Martin thinks about the world, but there are no characters in Game of Thrones who make the George R.R. Martin speech. George R.R. Martin does not have any mouthpieces in that novel. He's conveying to you a vision of the world through the very structure of cause effect. I don't actually think he's right. I think he's wrong about how the world works, but you can see it in who dies, who lives, whatever.
What's interesting about that to me is I agree with you. But I think because he's wrong about the way the world works, but is also a very, very good novelist. His books don't exactly make sense.
This happens a lot.
So he has people doing things that could only happen, magic and resurrection and all this stuff, that could only happen in a place where there was also a spiritual world. And yet, like when one of the guys comes back to life and they say, "What did you see?" and he says, "Nothing." I thought, well, then where did you come back from? What exactly does that mean? And like there's some wonderful stuff about prophecy being absolutely wrong and just people following prophecy into disaster. And that is absolutely hilarious and true. But there's also stuff where only some kind of spiritual explanation would suffice, and yet he mocks that idea. And it doesn't really make sense.
That's there. It's often the case that great writers with a bad life philosophy are kind of belied by their own work.
It's true.
Sally Rooney is somebody. I don't think she's as good as Martin, but Sally Rooney is this kind of like communist chick lit writer. She wrote Normal People was her most famous one. Beautiful Lover Are You. I really enjoyed her books, but like her characters always end up just like saying ridiculous Marxist philosophy and then making themselves miserable with it. And then the only time it ever goes well is if they become like Catholics and basically abandon their politics. So she's like sort of seeing that this stuff makes people miserable while still wanting to believe
Just like the book Germinal. Have you ever read that?
Yes, Zola.
Zola, and he's a socialist. And the socialists were furious at him because he just told the story truly. And at the end, you look at the socialists and go like, they're animals. This is terrible. They're wrong about everything.
Blindfold has a question. When is the best time to pray? I can answer this one really quick. Immediately upon waking up and then ceaselessly throughout the day. Just like this should be the first thing you do, and then you should do it. You should have periodic times throughout the day to do it. Yeah.
Have we got more in the?
We do. Yes.
We're coming to an end.
We do have to wrap this thing up. So let me. I want to make sure. Let's see. We will do another one of these. So if your question didn't get answered, we'll come back to it. We actually did answer Laura's question about how do you tell the difference between what you want and the will of God. Okay.
I will now do an aria from the opera while he's looking.
It's Nessun Dorma. Yeah. Maybe we should close with this one. You often bring up motherhood. This is directed at you. You often bring up motherhood and the importance of that role in your podcast and elsewhere. As a father of 2 under 2, I'm curious what your thoughts are on fatherhood, specifically what it means to be a good father to a boy versus a girl. How did you navigate these waters with your son, no relation, and daughter? Spencer, perhaps you have a take.
Well, I think in all things, in almost everything you do, the biggest thing is showing up and being there. And you have to be able. One of the things, how can I put this? I often give speeches to young people, and I can tell almost instantaneously when they ask questions whether their parents are divorced or not. And I have restrained myself from saying, "So when did your father leave?" Something like that, because I think that like being there is a very, very big deal. And the other thing is this: your children are not there for you. You are there for them. And that doesn't mean that you serve them. It means that you raise them and to be who they are.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of fathers who want something from their children. And I never wanted anything from my children except money. I want them to send me money. But aside from that, I wanted you to be yourself. It was not my business. There were things that were off limits. Like you couldn't be dishonest. If you had said, "Oh, by the way, I want to be a thief," I would have said, "No," and that's not.
Right.
But if you had said you wanted to go into some field that meant nothing to me, I would never have said, "Well, wouldn't you be more interested in this? Or don't you want to be that?" I think that a father has a kind of a. It's really interesting. We don't have time to go into this forever, but I think a mother's relationship with an infant is a relationship of the two of them separating and that child becoming an individual. And then I think a father's job almost kind of picks up from there, leading you into the world and showing you literally showing you that you can face the world honestly, strongly, courageously, unflinchingly, and not without fear. We're all afraid of things, but certainly without cowardice. And I think that like showing that to somebody is a great gift if you don't put a price on it, that the person then has to become you. And I just see this again and again with fathers. I think it's a big mistake. You let people go. That's what you're there. I mean, all of life is letting go. And certainly I think fatherhood, almost more than anything, is this, incredibly painful, but also beautiful letting go, because when you let go, you see a person become himself. And that's a great thing.
I was very lucky to have you as a father.
I keep telling you that.
You've never said that to me before.
No, I call you at like 3 a.m. Hey,
I hope you know. I don't have a take, but I have some advice for sons.
Okay.
Because of course, it's true that good fathers, the Bible says that children are arrows in your quiver, and people take this to mean like have as many children as possible. I take this to mean is your children have a trajectory.
Yeah,
an arrow.
That's right.
And so the trajectory is in part you can aim your children and you can guide them, but ultimately the target is away from you. They have some target that they're heading toward, and you're aiming them. And so like you do have to let go and as a son especially, but as a child generally, your task is to strike out, and that has its own. That's painful too sometimes, especially if you have good parents. It's hard. It's painful, even if it's good and necessary to kind of like establish your own way. And that's something that like I have thought through a lot because we're sort of I'm lucky that I kind of apprenticed in my dad's field, like a boy of old. But I have, we're very different in what we do. And I think like you have that task. There's another line from the Psalms though. Happy the man whose quiver is filled with these arrows. He shall not be ashamed when his foes, when he discourses with his foes in the gateways. That like this is indeed sons are a gift from the Lord, right? And it's sort of this is the picture of what like God's gifts are, sort of the natural outpouring of you. So you don't owe your parents that you should be them, but you should walk around thinking that somebody thinks of you that way. You should walk around thinking of you that there's somebody that thinks of you as God's gift, and thinks of you as an extension of his honor, as like the kind of a forward guard of his life at the gate when he disputes with his foes in the gateways. And you should be, you should take that very, very seriously. This is a commandment to honor your father, and you should, it can be painful if your father has a different idea about what that means than you do, but I think it means that your life should do credit to your parents.
Yes, and you should send money.
And you should send money. Yes, right. Well, I will send you money. Here's how I'm going to send you money: is that I'm reminding people one more time that they should pre-order Woman Underground and Light of the Mind, Light of the World together. Screenshot your pre-order, send it to us on at thenewjerusalem.substack.com, and subscribe.
Yes,
subscribe to the New Jerusalem, and this will be up. I think it'll go up right away because it's YouTube, so it should just.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you.
It's been a joy. Yes. Yeah, thanks for your great questions. Really interesting questions.
And I love this chat. I'm going to try and do this. Great team.
Great team.
I admire you.
Excellent.
We love talking to you.
We do. Yes. See you later.
All right.
And the stream is ended. It comes to the end of the stream. You'll no longer be live. Oh no. Die instantly.